It's easy, turn a 2-day weekend into...
Welcome, everyone, to the Screaming Boy podcast. I have a feeling I took a little too long on that.
I had a total, to be or not to be moment there. Where I'm just glad you picked up that reference.
About that.
I was 2 minutes from going into the bit that I was doing before we came on the air.
Well, thank God I started the show, because I have a feeling we're going to be hearing that anyway. We are on a network exclusive tonight, and I'm super excited to actually be doing another show. It has been a long time since we've done a Screaming Boy podcast show, so super pumped about the gentlemen that are here tonight with me, and we are doing the rise and fall of one Bill Cosby. And tonight on the show, we bring you no less than the best. We bring you professionals. We bring you I can't remember the word I'm trying to say. So anyway, we bring you the best. We bring you people who can English good, and unless it's me, and then we don't talk about that. But tonight we have on the panel talking about the cause. We have one totally 80s, Patrick Mullin. Pat, how you doing tonight, bud?
Oh man, if there's something totally 80s, it's probably the guy who was on the number one show of the 80s, so this is a good show for me to be on.
Absolutely. Pat, any show is a good show for you to be on.
I appreciate you so much, Ronnie.
Hey, man, no problem. Appreciate you. Now, the third voice that you're going to hear that you already heard, who likes to call me out on my crap, is the patriarch of the Radulich Broadcasting Network. That is Mark Quincy Radulich, Esquire. Mark, how you doing tonight?
I'm just ducky, pal.
Good. That's good to hear. As I said before, we are talking about the rise and fall of one Bill Cosby. This is pretty relevant to to now, because the trial, the conviction, the whole nine didn't happen too long ago at all. And I would dare say that he has had an influence, a big influence over all of our lives. As far as entertainment or anything like that. So when we talk about Bill Cosby, we go to him as William Henry Cosby Jr. And he was born in 1937. Of course, we know him as a stand-up comic, the star of the Cosby Show. He's been an author. It says here a musician. Of course, it's got to be jazz. I don't remember what he actually, as far as the jazz goes, I can't remember what he played or did. But he was a very talented man about town, or is, not was. He started his career in the 60s, and he actually had a show called The Bill Cosby Show. He was in I Spy. He started doing Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids. He really went to, of course, did many comedy specials and things like that. And then we all know him as Cliff Huxtable on the Cosby Show, the dad that changed the world of how we looked at wealth, how we looked at families, how we looked at dads on TV, and as far as it goes, how we looked at black families on TV, African American families. So, this had, a cultural icon is the only thing that I could think to describe him as through that period. He went on to produce spin-offs such as like A Different World. He went on starring the Cosby Mysteries. He did a revamp, kind of a new show, but kind of like the old one called Cosby, and hosted Kids Say the Darndest Things. But then it all kind of went to pot, and he was charged, or he had accusations of sexual assault brought against him. So, as far as it goes, I'm going to ask you a few questions, and we can just kind of get a dialogue started. How does one go from having what seemed like everything, money? He's been married for God knows how long. Let's see, he married in 1964, still married to this day, has 5 children,
Well,
and then, huh?
4, one's dead.
Well, had 5 children. Currently has 4. That was a little bit morbid.
Oh, poor Innes.
Not more, not morbid. Just saying, like he had 4 children. Now he had 5. Now he's got 4.
Yeah, true. Camille is his wife's name. So, I mean, as far as it goes, he was squeaky clean. Even his comedy specials didn't have much profanity in them at all. How do you well, let's go this way. Mark, what is your experience with Bill Cosby? Growing up, now, whatever.
All right. Well, I was born in 1976, and I was probably, I don't remember the exact year Bill Cosby himself came out, but I remember it was one of the, it had to have been on in the early years of HBO, because that's where I found it. And since my parents didn't care what I watched, up to pornography, I watched everything that was on HBO. And I discovered I've always had an attraction to stand-up comedy, and so I grew up in this black neighborhood, and here's this black guy, and he's telling these stories, and they're the funniest things I've ever heard. I'm like 5 or 6 probably when this happened.
Yeah.
I just his stuff about, like, some of this stuff obviously as a child I didn't get. When he's talking about what is it about cocaine that makes it so wonderful? Well, it intensifies your personality. Yeah, I didn't know what intensifies meant, but I would still.
But it was awesome.
But the following line is, yes, but what if you're an asshole, dude? I would quote that. I mean, even back then. Yes, I've always had a mouth on me. I loved Bill Cosby himself. And then, of course, I'm a child of the 80s, just like Pat, though Pat's younger than me. I grew up with The Cosby Show, and then A Different World, which was the spin-off that featured, at least for the first season, Lisa Bonet.
Yeah.
And then after
Roll
that...
Tide on Lisa Bonet. Roll Tide.
Indeed. And then after that, she left the show, but they continued on with the remainder of the cast for several years. So, that's really the bulk of my experience with Cosby, was his initial Bill Cosby himself stand-up. And then, the third thing that really solidified my love of the guy and why he's on my Mount Rushmore, even still, he's on my Mount Rushmore of comedians. I'm not saying he isn't a terrible person, and that he, should be forgiven for raping who knows how many women. I'm not saying that, but I think the whole point of this podcast is to say the guy created gems. They're still gems, even though he's a piece of shit. So that being said, still on my Mount Rushmore of comedians, and one of the reasons why is, even as a kid, I don't know why I had them, but I did. I had a whole bunch of his albums, like his pre-Bill Cosby himself stuff, like Why Is There Air? Noah's a Very Funny Fellow, right?
Did you have to My Brother Russell, With Whom I Slept?
I did.
That's just, that album is just unbelievable.
It's brilliant. Why is there air? All that stuff. I had all those records for one reason or another. I had a nightclub act of his. He had a Bill Cosby for Adults Only album which he does like a nightclub act. And I remember I remember him doing a bit about his daughters totally, as a parent now, I totally relate to this, where like his two daughters who are like a year apart are eating dinner and they're gross. I get it. I have children. I've seen it. And so he's trying to ignore them, and he's like not even listening to them talking. And then one of them just shouts, gets up, pulls up her shirt, and yells, "See my titties!" And to this day, that still makes me laugh. And then there's a whole bit that follows that about how, as a parent, you lose all your coolness, and if you hear your kid say something like "see my titties," you're like, "Where did you get that from?" Like, totally relate. Even today. But yeah, that was my experience with Cosby. It was his stand-up and then his television shows in the early 80s.
Okay. Well, same question, Pat.
So my first introduction to Bill Cosby was the Cosby Show. I think that's going to be it for most people, but that was my introduction to him. Mm-hmm. And even when I was very young, I always enjoyed trying to be funny. I was not always funny. I was always trying to be funny.
Right.
And, yeah. So when I figured out there's an actual craft involved in it and things of that nature, I started trying to, look at, okay, how did this guy do that? And I was looking at, people who I knew as great stand-up comedians, or at least were guys who I thought were hysterical. So I listened to, my first, comedian I wanted to listen to was Dennis Leary. So I listened to Dennis Leary. And I listened to Dice Clay, because Dice was taboo for kids, so naturally I had to hear him.
Dice is on my Mount Rushmore, by the way.
Not shocking.
No. And then I would listen to more intellectual stuff like George Carlin. And then I was told by my dad, you should listen to Bill Cosby. I was like, guy on TV? Yeah, why do you think he got there? I was like, I don't know. He was like, well, he's one of the best stand-up comics of all time. Listen to him. So the first thing I got was Bill Cosby himself, the special.
Yeah.
Like Mark was talking about. And oh my gosh, it was unbelievable. It was a revelation. And the majority of the act was clean, too.
Yeah.
Which is the thing that stood out. Because, again, I'm listening to Dennis Leary. I'm listening to Dice Clay. Even George Carlin, even though George Carlin wasn't doing, every other word as an F-bomb or whatever, George was still talking about vulgar subjects and use language.
Mm-hmm.
But Cosby, for the most part, was clean. And I was like, how about that? So I wanted to dig up a CD or whatever I could find. So the first one I got was to my brother Russell, with whom I slept. And I never laughed so hard, as when I heard that the first time. It was such a great album. And so I was so impressed by him in that sense. And then I looked, I would always see on the credits of his show, by William Cosby Jr., Ed D., Doctor. I'm like,
yeah.
Wait, really? And then I found out he was a big, pursuer of, trying to get people to follow their education and all this stuff. And I was like, wow, I really like this guy. Now, of course, we find out what we find out, and here we are.
As far as it goes, just like you guys,
hang on, before you say anything, raise your hand if you saw Leonard Part 6 in the theaters. I did.
Oof. No,
I did not. I did see Ghost Dad in theaters.
Oof.
The reason why we have fun.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Creepy. I saw Leonard Part 6 on HBO, and I always wanted to watch it. My mom's like, no, it's pretty terrible. And I thought she meant bad. She goes, no, it's just a terrible movie, and you won't like it. And I was like, oh. And she was right. It was a terrible movie. I started with Cosby much like you all did. Of course, I knew him from the Cosby Show, and being that dad that everybody loved. He was one of the first. Still is one of the only TV dads that I know that wasn't made out to be a moron, or overly aggressive. You think of moron, Peter Griffin, kind of. Help me out, Mark and Pat. Name some TV dads that are just absolute, just idiots.
Tim Allen on Home Improvement.
Okay.
Well, I mean, Archie Bunker. While
Archie Bunker wasn't so much a moron as he was very aggressive.
Well, I was going to say Archie Bunker, was made. The problem was he was very much a product of his time.
Yeah.
But the frame for which they used for Archie Bunker was, hey, let's have a laugh at the guy who's like behind the times and is kind of a throwback to, aren't we so much more progressive than this? Oh, look at old Archie over there using words like colored, like ha ha, so, like Archie was meant to be laughed at. As it turns out, we're a hugely racist country, and he was beloved. So, there's that. Bet on the wrong horse, Hollywood.
Right.
We just put over Bill Cosby. We can't be racist.
Well,
that's it. We convicted Bill Cosby. We're officially off the hook for racism. Is that how that goes?
We're on the hook for a lot of different things other than that, but we're off the hook for racism.
Yeah. You hear that? You hear that, black folks? Stop complaining. We convicted Bill Cosby. You win.
No, this is no. You can't do that on my show.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh God.
Well, there went the audience with the neighborhood.
Right. But the thing that changed my life, thing that changed everything I thought about Bill Cosby, was my grandfather. Who was, he has since passed away. He was one of those guys. He's very conservative, very, you wouldn't ever think that he would enjoy comedy albums. I mean, shoot, he had, cassette tapes in his car, and it was all like Boots Randolph and stuff like that, saxophones and stuff. But this one stuck out to me. I was like, himself, what does this mean? I was like, did Bill Cosby sing? He goes, no. Put it in. And we listened to it, and I remember laughing with my grandfather and just crying laughing at this as a young boy. And so when it was all said and done, my grandfather was like, "You just take it, it's yours." And he gave me the tape because he knew I loved it, and I probably wore that tape out. I listened to it so many times. And through that, opened me up to his other stand-up and things like that. And no matter what Cosby Show was on, Bill Cosby ran his show. The Cosby Show. I even went back and watched reruns of Fat Albert. I watched Cosby. I watched the Cosby Murders, things like that. I watched it just because I enjoyed Bill Cosby.
Did you watch Picture Pages? I did.
Probably.
With his Bumblebee pen.
Yes! Oh my gosh, yes. Is that what that was called?
Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah, I'm so excited right now, and I don't know why. But, yeah, I remember that.
Do you remember the theme to it? Picture pages, lots of fun with picture pages, lots of fun with crayons and your pencils.
I didn't, but now it's stuck in my head forever.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So, through his career, he had what seems to be a positive impact. Well, on all three of us, I know, because of the way we were talking about. He was one of the first stand-up comedians I remember being relatively clean through this popular. And then, like I said, he painted himself with a squeaky clean.
He transcended race. That was the thing.
That was my next point. Absolutely.
Like if you think about who are the big three, the three big black comics of that era? It was Red Fox, Richard Pryor, and Bill Cosby. Pryor.
Yeah.
And the thing about Pryor and Red Fox was,
you could throw Murphy in there too,
but he comes later. He's the second generation. He's the 80s. We're talking like this is the 60s and the 70s. Like Red Fox, Pryor, and Bill Cosby. And the thing with Pryor and Red Fox was theirs was like the authentic black experience, and you left because their stories are funny, but they had a point of view, and it was a very racial point of view. And I'm not saying there was anything wrong with that, but you got from Pryor what it was like to be poor and black in America. You got from Red Fox, poor black in America. What you got from Cosby was what it was like to be in a family. You know what I mean?
The funny thing, too, was that when Richard started out, Richard was trying to do Bill Cosby.
Right.
Yeah.
He had a clean act that he was trying to go the same route as Bill Cosby and do that type of comedy, just like observational humor. But, once he figured out, there's a market for this, and I think you can contribute that to the influence of Red Fox, that's when he kind of switched over to that way and found really his niche. But Richard broke in because of and was trying to be Bill Cosby.
Bill Cosby. Mm-hmm. We'll talk about the Cosby Show. It was one of the first sitcoms that showed an African American family. Both of them were doctors. They lived in a very nice house in a very nice neighborhood.
She was a lawyer.
Oh, she was a lawyer.
Yeah,
and
up to this point, what are some of the black shows that were out there? There was Good Times.
Good Times. What's happening?
Times.
Right.
Yeah. What's happening?
Those are the two.
But literally, every show with a black family. I think this is the point Mark's going to make. Every show with a black family either had them in the ghetto, or a single parent family at a certain point.
And again, the shows always had like a racial tinge to them. Like even the Jeffersons, which was a spinoff of Archie, of All in the Family, rather. What was the concept of the Jeffersons was, look, there's this black family that through their hard labor, and their and pulling themselves up by their own bootstraps, a very conservative story, moves on up and lives the high life, in the face of all this whiteness and all these rich white people. There's the Jeffersons being proudly black, having their own money, and no one can tell them what to do. That was the Jeffersons. That was what what's happening. Again, had a very racial tinge to it. Not every episode. I mean, there was a lot of dancing. There was a lot of dancing rerun for sure. But but there was definitely.
I do have to say my favorite thing about Good Times was the Florida Evans damn.
Right. And like the dad on that show, I think like worked maintenance or something. Like he had a very blue collar job.
He did. He was a maintenance worker, repairman, whatever you want to call him. But so that show started with two parents and a family, and they were in the ghetto. But they very quickly eliminated the John Amos character, and now you have the stereotypical at the time black family without a father figure.
Yep.
So the Cosby Show really represents, again, it transcended race, because here was this well-to-do family. Dad's a doctor, mom's a lawyer. There was no authentic blackness per se, and that might sound like I'm condemning the show in a way, or I'm saying like, it was really. I'm trying to say that the Cosby Show was for everybody. This was a show about family. This was, it dealt with its issues here and there. But I don't remember it being particularly racial.
They had a few issues. Well, wasn't one of them Theo was stopped in a neighborhood for being black?
If it was, that was much later on.
Yeah. But I remember that.
I don't recall that so much as, he actually just incorporated issues that everybody faced, regardless of race, when they did, not necessarily very special episodes, because they weren't big on those, but episodes that had, a point where, like, say, one of Denise's friends needed birth control. Mm-hmm. And, so she went to, Bill and was like, Dr. Huxtable, I need birth. And he tried to get to the bottom of why, and, wanted the girl to talk to her parent. It was stuff like that. It was very typical stuff that everybody could understand and everybody goes through a certain.
That's the thing. Like the Cosby Show, I think, spoke to a more universal audience than Good Times or What's Happening did.
And nobody really expected that out of it, though. I almost guarantee you. when they first heard that the Cosby Show was going to be on the air, I guarantee they didn't expect the phenomenon that it was. I mean, he wore some of the ugliest sweaters I've ever seen on a man, and he couldn't dance for anything. Not saying that. I'm just saying that's funny. I'm not.
The show had so much charm, though. Felicia
It
Rashad.
did.
Felicia Rashad's pretty hot. The kids had a lot of the kids all the way down to what's the little one's name? Rudy. All had some pizzazz to them. They like there wasn't a kid on there that you wanted to throat punch.
Actually, there was.
Well, Raven Simone doesn't count.
Yes, she does.
It was so
she's
late.
like cousin Oliver of the Cosby Show.
Was it you or was it Jesse who I talked about with the character Seven on Married with Children? It was Jesse. But do you remember that?
Jesse. I think so.
He was named Seven because his parents had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 children.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so Raven Simone's kind of in the 7 category.
No,
and doesn't
Raven
count.
Simone is in the Cousin Oliver category when they brought Cousin Oliver onto the Brady Bunch, and it had already jumped the shark.
Okay. In any case,
everybody hated Cousin Oliver.
In any case, the cast
and
was
everybody
great.
hated. Oh wait, no, everybody didn't hate Raven. That was just me.
Oh no, I'm right there with you. I did not like that character.
I grew to like her later on in other shows, but not this show.
Yeah, Raven Simone's fine now, but she was definitely one of those like casting choices. She was definitely one of those casting choices where somebody in Hollywood is just like, oh, she's got that spunky kid thing going on, and it's like, ugh,
yeah,
I hate you.
Yeah, like hanging with Mr. Cooper, she was fine. Here, not so much.
Gosh, I don't remember her hanging. I don't remember hanging with Mr. Cooper. I remember it being a show.
It's on Hulu.
Oh gosh,
there's a lot of other stuff on.
I remember hanging with Mr. Cooper only because the comedian that was on that show talked about it in his stand-up, and like he was talking about like having moved into the rich white neighborhood, and and listening to like a action movie on his TV, and the neighbors could hear him. It's like, oh my God, Mr. Cooper's killing people. But to close out this point, the appeal of the Cosby Show was universal. It had a great cast. It spoke to everybody. It spoke to issues that most families dealt with. It was not authentically black in the sense of it had a niche audience. It had a universal audience.
Right. So we look at it. I mean, this man is on top of the world. He's got a doctorate. He went for a master's doctorate. He's had successful TV shows, a successful stand-up career. He, is beloved by millions. How does it all go wrong? We know how it all went wrong. He raped a bunch of people. But I mean, that's
Cosby, had you just not been raping people?
Could you have just not been a sexual deviant?
Right. So, I mean, how does this man that has lived most of his adult life, we'll say, in the spotlight, keep all of this so quiet to where we turn around, he's 81 years old, and we find out about it now.
Okay, so for some perspective, this wasn't a recent thing. He didn't just wake up one morning and be like, "Man, with the pudding pops, and I'm going to start raping women. It's my right." He didn't like that.
Right.
Didn't happen.
No,
this started in this.
No, I'm saying, how does he keep it quiet for 60 years?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, this starts in the, like, I'm reading the Wikipedia page now, and it says, like, the first dated one is in the 1960s in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Sexual assault. Sonny Wells claims that Cosby offered her drinks at a jazz club, then remembers only waking up naked the next day. I probably shouldn't chuckle at these things. Pardon me.
You shouldn't. You're going to.
Unsure what happened, alleges she accepted another invitation to meet Cosby where she again had a drink and woke up naked because she didn't learn the first time. Sorry, I added that last part.
You can't. So we're all thinking it. I'm sorry, we are.
But I just needed to make that point. Was like, as long as he's been Bill Cosby, the entertainer, He's been raping. This isn't
He's
a new
been Bill
thing.
Cosby, the sexual deviant.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's just it blows my mind that this goes all the way back to the 1960s. So forgive me, almost 60 years, 50 years, that he's been keeping this on the low. I mean, you can't keep things like this quiet for so long, obviously. But this is a long time to live your life in the spotlight and nobody know what happened.
Well, and that's one of the parts we could bring up too, is that really this came to light publicly from Hannibal Buress doing a gig in Philadelphia, which is Cosby's kind of adopted hometown. Mm-hmm. And I like Hannibal Buress, for those who don't know, is a current stand-up comic. And basically, he was doing a bit about Cosby, and it was I forget what the exact line was, but then he basically
hang on. Let me help you out here because this needs some framing. Okay, Pat, you and I are gonna be kind of a tag team here. I'm gonna start it. You finish. Okay.
Yeah.
Here's what people need to understand. So the 90s happen. And prison culture starts to like invade mainstream culture, in far as saggy pants and thug mentality as a cultural thing among.
Are you going for the pound cake speech?
Yeah, hang on. So that's happening in black culture, and then here comes Bill Cosby now saying. And he starts shaming black men and black women to a lesser extent, but basically just shaming black people that we should not present ourselves as morons and thugs and criminals, and so he kind of gets into a culture war with part of the black community. What Hannibal Buress was on about in his bit is. There grew out of this like an intellectual standpoint of one, the worthiness of some of that cultural stuff, for better or for worse. Two, Bill Cosby has no right to be condemning anybody. He's a rapist. I'm going to tag him Pat now. Right.
So Hannibal Buress does this bit in this club in Philadelphia, and now living in the time we're in now, as opposed to the 60s, 70s, 80s, even 90s, somebody's got their camera phone out taping this bit, and they put it out on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And once this gets out on YouTube, I guess, be it partly courage on the end of some, and let's be fair, partly get-rich-quick scheme on the end of some,
yeah,
these women start to come forward and say, you know what, it's finally time for me to tell, because now it's out there at this level. And this had been something that a lot of people within the comedy industry and the entertainment industry had either heard about or had some type of experience with. And now Hannibal Buress is doing this bit that goes viral, and that was really the match that lit the fuse for all of this to come out into the public eye.
To be clear, the earliest report, I mean, again, this didn't just start recently. So, for those that might think, this is all the hashtag Me Too stuff and people just trying to, it's not all as cynical as all that. People did make these claims going as far back as the 80s. Joan Tarsis claims Cosby mixed her drink while they were working together and awoke to Cosby raping her. Originally told her story to a reporter in the 80s who declined to publish it. And I'm taking a wild guess here that he figured, I could publish this story. Bill Cosby and his powerful lawyers will crush me and I will no longer be a reporter. This shit ain't worth it.
Right.
And that's not just, an isolated incident. Wendy Williams was doing a radio show, and this is like the late 80s, and she made a reference to one of these stories that got printed in the Inquirer, and Wendy Williams came out like a year later and was like, and by a year later I mean like 1991, around there, and said that Cosby had called her boss in the middle of her broadcast when this was brought to his attention and demanded that she be fired.
Mm.
So, like, this wasn't, again, like Mark said, this wasn't something that just happened, and it's not a part of the Me Too. This has been something that's been kept on the hush-hush for a long time, partly because of the power that Cosby commanded for a long time, partly because of, fear of these people, partly because of things that were like, much harder to prove in those days and weren't taken as seriously as they are now. Mm. So there's a lot of things that stopped these allegations from coming out to the surface. And probably the highest profile one that was silenced a couple times was Janice Dickinson.
So, for those that don't know, Janice Dickinson, in 1982, first reports in 2002, that claims Cosby had been following her career and invited her to his hotel immediately after she left drug rehab. Alleges Cosby gave her wine and a pill and awoke to him raping her. Provided her story in 2002 for her autobiography, but her publisher cut it in fear of being sued. Also made vague allegations in 2006 with Howard Stern, saying she could not go into too much detail because she feared being targeted by Cosby.
Yeah, the Stern show I actually remember listening to. Mm. And at the time, her rep wasn't exactly the greatest because I think she had just been on Celebrity Rehab, among other things. So she wasn't exactly looked at as this pillar of credibility. But right. Howard at the time also brought up that, like, well, this isn't the first time I'm hearing somebody make these allegations against Cosby.
Something like, let's see, what was it? How many women came out? 60? More than 60 women came out and accused him of rape, sexual assault, sexual battery, child sexual abuse, and sexual misconduct. And drug-facilitated sexual assault. And now the child sexual abuse I hadn't heard about, mainly because the media was so flooded with this that it all runs together. I mean, I probably heard it, but it blew my mind at the time.
Who made that allegation was Tempest Bledsoe, who played Vanessa.
That's right.
On the Cosby Show.
Oh, I hadn't heard this.
Yeah.
She's claiming to have been assaulted as a child by him?
She claimed she wasn't assaulted, but that he was attempting to without her really realizing it at the time. Like, it was... and it's a really sketchy story. And again, it's one of those things where those stories are always difficult to believe, especially when you say they took place on set. Because, like, children are always monitored pretty heavily while on set. Now, once the show's over and filming's done, anything goes. But on set is a very different atmosphere.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I'm going to tell you that I'll believe just about any story as far as child sex goes in Hollywood. Look it up, folks. I'm not going to get into it. But there are some reported horror stories about stuff that has happened to kids. I'm going to throw out the term child sex trafficking in Hollywood. It's gross. So I'm willing to believe that if you're some grip, or someone holding a boom mic or something, you're somebody working backstage on the Cosby Show, and you happen to see something, you're not talking about it. Yeah. You're trying to keep your gig.
Well, I mean,
that sounds.
The Coreys of the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
That whole thing, which is too. I don't want to say outlandish, but it's pretty. You have to be like really dumb or brave to make something like that up.
Look at what happened with Drew Barrymore, right? She was like a little kid, and they were feeding her drugs and alcohol.
Oh yeah, constantly.
Look, Robert Downey Jr. Same thing.
Yeah. So we all know that Hollywood is gross. It's just it's a, to borrow a term from Star Wars. It's a hive of, man, I can't even remember it.
It's a hive of scum and villainy.
Villainy. It's just I think I was in a state of disbelief. So much so that when it came out, I was like, "Oh, come on! And I mean, this whole thing with the Me Too and the rape culture, everybody crying rape culture and everything. Now we're not going to get into that. I did watch a lot of. I have recently watched a lot of Steven Crowder. Yes, I do watch Steven Crowder and listen to him.
Oh, my friend writes for that show. Louder with Crowder, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
my buddy, Freak Boy from formerly of Scoops and 401 Mania, writes for Louder with Crowder.
Wow,
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I might be going to WrestleMania with him.
Nice. It's not a network show unless we mention wrestling.
Everyone take a drink.
Everybody take a drink. But
just make sure there's nothing in it. It's not Coke.
don't accept a drink from Bill Cosby or anyone in Hollywood.
As long as it's not from Cosby, we're good. Or Weinstein or anybody. Now, we know that Hollywood, like I said, Hollywood is gross. I mean, old Harvey, I really truly believe that man is just, he's got the devil in him. As far as that goes,
let's put this out there. I mean, we're condemning Hollywood as if it's like some far out place where it's the only place where anyone's ever been touched inappropriately.
Oh no,
I mean, and that's not the case. You ask how could America's dad, have kept all this? Because here's the thing, rape's kind of been a thing for eons.
Since the dawn of.
Sexualizing women, always been a thing. Like, I think that's what makes living right now, such an interesting time, for better or for worse, because it's only now that things are so significantly different than the rest of human existence, where, where men, can and did use their strength to overpower women. I mean, if you look at, statistics for, unreported sexual assaults, it's huge. For every report that's made, there's 10 that I hate to be like Jim Jeffries here. I'm completely making up statistics, but there's a lot. There's more unreported acts of sexual assault on women than reported, and men too. Men get sexually assaulted, and they're even less going to report because of the perception of what kind of a man are you for having been assaulted that way.
There is an episode of Too Close for Comfort about that.
So
really?
how did Cosby? First of all, how was Cosby? Even capable of all of this? Well, he's a guy. He was a guy who was a cultural icon. He was probably felt he was entitled.
I'm not going to go into.
Plus, he's also kind of a mess.
He also had a doctor that willingly prescribed him Quaaludes.
Right.
I wanted to bring
I'm not going to go into why he did this or what's. We all know why he did it.
Well, no. What I was going to say is, and I want to call this out, and I promise I will stop hijacking your show and shut up. But I needed to put this out there into the world. So you go back and you listen to those early Cosby albums, and they're hilarious. But that's on the surface. If you start to dig into sort of the psychological aspects of what that guy goes through in order to have lived those stories, I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. He did a bit on one of his albums where I think Camille was prompting him to talk to Ennis about, what if he gets a girl pregnant or something along those lines. I don't remember the whole setup, but essentially the major parts of this are talk to your son about not getting girls pregnant, how he has to be careful. And Bill Cosby says, now he acknowledges that he's saying that he's looking at this the wrong way, but in the midst of the bit, he's like, but that's not the I remember this now. They were talking about his sisters getting pregnant, possibly, and he says, "Well, what about your son? What if he impregnates somebody?" And Bill Cosby goes, "That's not the male's problem." And you could hear the entire audience go, go ahead.
I'm gonna piggyback off of that once you're done.
Okay, so long story short, too late. If you think about Cosby talks about they moved from wherever the hell they were in Philadelphia to the projects, and like the hoods he ran into, and he tells these stories about like basically like sexualizing young women, but as a teenager, and so like he cleans it up a lot, but that element of his personality is still there. So you're starting with a corrupted base to begin with, and then you pile on top of that fame and fortune and power, and now you have the ability to silence people. Dude, if you've got infinite, if you have the ability to make half the universe go away with a snap, you're going to use it. That's just human nature.
All right, Thanos.
But no, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like, why was he capable of it? Well, it was always in him, and then he got rich and famous, and off to the races we went.
Yeah. So, you know how like criminals at a certain point they either return to the scene of the crime or they believe themselves to be so above the law at a certain point that they get cocky about it?
Sure.
Okay, well, there's a 1990 episode in season 7 of the Cosby Show called "The Last Barbecue." Now, in this, are you guys familiar with this offhand or no?
No, but maybe you can hum a few bars.
No. Okay, perfect. So, in this episode, the plot line is that Elvin, his son-in-law, wants to crack his secret sauce recipe for his barbecue sauce.
Oh yeah.
Now, he consistently talks about how the barbecue sauce is magical because have you ever noticed that any time people have the sauce, they immediately want to go home right after? And I keep a cup of it on the nightstand.
Oh, no.
So, the episode involves all of these couples fighting, and then all of a sudden,
I don't want that sauce.
Having this barbecue sauce, and all of a sudden, once they have the sauce, they all want to go get it on.
Once they had the sauce, they got the sauce.
Oh, no. No.
Now, I'm just saying, from that alone, that's pretty not good in hindsight.
Yeah.
That's pretty bad.
Well, we all know that he was really rapey when you go back and look at it. Not a dude you want to hang out with or leave loved ones with for any amount, short amount or short or long amount.
What are you basing that on exactly?
What you all just said.
Okay. Devoid of these allegations, and that's why I'm a little confused by that statement. Because what I said was like he's done these bits.
That was a little bit. There was a humor in that.
Okay.
So because of how I said it.
Okay.
This is a very heavy subject, and we're trying to throw out a few jokes here and there just to get a nervous laugh and take a breather and relax a little bit because sometimes with things like this, I don't know about you guys, I tend to walk on eggshells because I have certain do what?
Nah.
Yeah, I know. Mark either. But I have certain views about things. Now, as far as sexual misconduct or anything like that, I feel that every time somebody brings that forward, it needs to be investigated. Absolutely, and so I just want to get that out in the open. Anytime it's very serious, and you have to take it seriously, and it's something that, as of right now, I think, what with 60 women coming forth and the Me Too movement and things like that, I think that we have to be a little more careful in. Well, as a guy, as guys, we are probably terrified at different, Pardon?
I'm going to piggyback off you again, and I'm not even kidding about this. Okay, I'm a single man who lives by himself, right?
Yeah.
So, if there is the opportunity where I am to have, say, a female guest over, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have to tell them, hey, I have cameras in my house because I am afraid of someone making a false claim against me.
Right.
And I'm not kidding about that.
No, absolutely. I mean, no, I agree. Am I saying that any of the allegations or anything like that against Cosby are false? No. I mean, you look at it. I mean, some may say that some of the women knew they were they were there to party and get high or get drunk or whatever.
I'm going to steal the ball from you there. I'm going to steal the ball from you there. So you guys need to get my wife on this show right now. We're not going to. She's sleeping, but and not from Quaaludes or anything. I just want to make that clear.
Oh my God!
I didn't give her Cosby's barbecue sauce. She's not feeling very well. But we got into a very heated discussion, and I sometimes back myself into the corner of being like the token liberal, even though I have a lot of conservative views, because there are just certain things that I'm not. I don't take a hardline conservative view on, and then whoever it is I'm talking to does, and so by like virtue of that, I'm pushed into a liberal corner somehow.
Right.
Well, that happened with my wife. Okay, who like angrily and self-righteously said, regret is not rape. Okay? If some girl sleeps with Pat and wakes up the next day and goes, I shouldn't have done that, but every step,
normal.
every step of the way, I mean, and we're talking alcohol's involved here, right? Or drugs or whatever.
Yeah, sure, okay.
If you this is my wife's argument. So for those of you that are going to tweet, send tweets or like hate mail, whatever, just mind you, this is my wife making this argument, not me. She goes, if you as a girl go out with a guy and decide to have a drink and then another drink and then another drink and then you go home and sleep with that guy and then you wake up the next morning and go, what have I done? You weren't raped. You're an asshole. Okay. And so she's like aggravated by the time that we're living in right now, because she feels like some of these allegations of rape and sexual assault are really girls who woke up with a whore complex and didn't want to live with it, and so the guy raped her. And she's like vicious about it. She's like, yeah, these women have got to go.
Yeah, well, she's not wrong.
Right.
2, I will use a line from Ricky Morton, and I'll be shocked if this doesn't apply to anybody here. I've never went to bed with an ugly girl, but I've woken up with a couple. And you know what? I hit the regret button pretty immediately, but never to the point where I was going to say I've been raped.
Right.
Maybe it's believable in some of those scenarios based on some of them. I'm not going to lie.
I think it's also different when you're a guy, though, in those situations, because what you just described is I woke up next to a heifer. I was like, oh my, like, what's the worst that's going to happen here? Your friends make fun of you for for fucking an ugly girl or whatever, or a fat chick, whatever. I think with a lot of women, because of this, the way society is structured and how they're framed and how they're supposed to be. Like, you go from nice school to whore pretty quickly in this society.
Well, and it's still, regardless of how much we want to say is equal or whatever, it's still, to this day, it's the guy got it, the girl's the one who gave it up.
Right. Which is utterly sexist. I mean, it's the way it's been, and probably the way it's going to be for the foreseeable future. But but it does come from a place of sexism.
Well, I mean, I'll be, I'm not going to go under this saying that guys who sleep around, I won't say that they're not viewed differently at all. The women who have multiple sexual partners are viewed very differently than guys.
Sure, they're torn down.
Yeah, they're torn down, absolutely. So yes, coming from that point of view, absolutely. It's wrong. It shouldn't happen. But also, I mean, we gotta. I guess what I'm saying is, do you think that this is bringing about a dangerous part in our culture as far as people making allegations that, like you said, of regret and then calling them rape?
Here's the thing. The three of us are not going to get accused of shit. We have nothing and nobody gains anything by trying to take one of us down.
Actually, that's not true. and I'll bring this up, and I'll just put this in here too. So back in 2016 2016 in that time, I was falsely accused and targeted by people because I was at a job where we were being treated very poorly, and I was working to unionize it, and I was the front guy for the unionization effort.
Okay.
So what they did was they had
continue your story, but that isn't what I was talking about. But go ahead.
Right. They had a trans person accuse me of threatening and sexually assaulting them by groping their private parts and what have you. Now, I was fortunate enough in that when the dummy bought into this claim from them, she lied through her teeth and made stupid statements that couldn't be corroborated. And I also, since I didn't do anything, there were no witnesses, there was no camera evidence, and I was fortunate enough to be backed by people who were like, yeah, this didn't happen, you need to make this right. And I was very fortunate in that aspect. Also, I give credit to the fact that the detective who had to investigate, they went that far, was very much on the level and didn't have an agenda and was just a good cop.
Okay, so my initial statement presumes that we have no power, we have nothing worth taking. You were in a very different situation there. So I apologize, because obviously that actually happened to you and when I was trying to make a general statement. But the point that I was trying to make is if you have no power, and you have nothing that can be gained by the other person, it's not likely they're ever going to make an accusation against you. Statistically, women don't even make the claim. So I right now, as much as we keep saying it, and I have said over and over again, I've said it to Jesse, I've said it at least once on this show, and I've said it on plenty of other shows. A little afraid for my son and my nephew, and this is where I make jokes about the robot brothel and all of that, but that's where that comes from. But realistically, at least based on statistics, it's not likely they're ever. There's like a 1 in 20 chance that some girl wakes up the next day after being with one of them and, in 10, 20 years in the future, again, we're talking about a 4 and 2-year-old here, and says, oh, they raped me because of regret. It's not likely statistically. Number one. Number two, again, these things happen in most cases to people who they'll derive a benefit from. The odds that it happens to like a nobody, significantly less.
Okay, we can go with that. Now, as far as we're talking about, okay, let's not talk about that whole movement or anything like that. Because
we've done such an awesome job of doing it so far.
Yeah, absolutely. We're here to talk about Cosby, not the other stuff. But I will say this: do I believe all these women? Most of them, yes, absolutely, because of the allegations, because of everything that was the evidence that was brought forth. Yes. Now there are some situations where we automatically jump into the guilty until proven innocent, and that's what scares me, because automatically when somebody says something like this happens, we automatically we go for the throat. Now, does that mean we don't need to treat it seriously? Absolutely not. We need to treat it very seriously, and investigate. Just like Pat, the truth came out. I mean, he was thankfully was, they told him, they told the truth about it. Or got the truth, not told the truth, but they got the truth out of it, and it was found that it was all lies. But we automatically go into this whole situation where automatically everybody's guilty, and we need to be careful about that as human beings, with anything, not just this situation. Mark, I know you have a whole thing that you were talking about this. How did he get caught? What finally brought the Cosby empire crumbling down around him?
Well, I mean, the thing that got him, the case that got him sentenced was, I believe, Andrea Constand, was the Andrea Constand case. Forgive me, I'm not totally steeped in all the finer details of this. I'm just kind of reading off the Wikipedia page, but
sure.
Says Andrea Constand versus Cosby is a civil suit filed in 2005 and resolved with an undisclosed cash settlement. Oh wait, that's not this. This is the I know there was a mistrial and then this is the retrial.
The Constant one, wasn't that the one where they eventually found that he admitted to using Quaaludes in that case, but did not admit to rape or anything. It said that he just used Quaaludes to get them to be more agreeable. Yeah. And because of that, there was a follow-up case where that evidence was deemed damning to that case.
All right. So it says, in January 2004, Constant went to Cosby's home in Elkins Park, Pennsylvania. After a night out with friends, Constant stated that Cosby listened to her complaints about stress. According to Constant, Cosby gave her 3 blue pills he claimed would help her relax. They made her semi-conscious and unable to move. Then Cosby allegedly touched her breast and crotch and put her hand on his penis. She further claimed that she woke up around 4 a.m. to find her clothing all over the room. There's a lot more here. In the deposition, Cosby testified that he obtained Quaaludes from gynecologist Leroy Amar, who knew that Cosby had no intention of taking the drugs himself. Cosby instead intended to give them to women he wanted to have sexual relationships with and admitted that he had given the drug to at least one woman and other people. Cosby admitted knowing it was illegal at the time to dispense the drug to other people. Amar would later have his medical license revoked in California and New York. The judge ruled that releasing the sealed document was justified by Cosby's role as a public moralist, in contrast to his possible criminal private behavior. The New York Times, having obtained the complete deposition from the court report service, which had released the document to the public domain, published a summary and excerpts. Cosby's testimony shows a history of casual sex involving Quaaludes with a series of young women. But his whole thing is, they agree to take Quaaludes and, as part of the experience, not that he was roofing people.
Yeah, he's not admitting to Quaaludes as so much a facilitator as it is to get that, and not a facilitator, but just it's the old thing where not saying no is being taken as saying yes because they weren't capable of saying no from the Quaaludes.
Right.
So, as we said, this is what he admitted to it. To using Quaaludes, using Quaaludes to make these women more, quote unquote, gross agreeable. So, man, America's dad admits to drugging women, or using drugs that he illegally, got from a doctor.
Yeah. January 2004, the month that Constance said Mr. Cosby assaulted her at his home after giving her wine and 3 pills that left her frozen. Besides the issue of whether the encounter was consensual, Mr. Cosby's team has questioned whether it even occurred earlier than Miss Constance described, which would place the episode too far outside the statute of limitations for Cosby to be held criminally liable. So yeah, there was a point where they were arguing, well, this happened too long ago to bring up for trial now. Apparently it just made it in under the deadline.
Man.
Miss Constant, who left. Miss Constant left.
Thankfully, it did make it. Under the deadline.
Miss Constant, who left Temple and moved back to Toronto, tells her mother that Cosby assaulted her about a year earlier. They call him and contact the Canadian police. 3 days later, Mr. Cosby returns the calls, apologizes, declines to identify the pills, but suggests the sex was consensual.
Well, now we know that it all came to light. The man was found guilty at 81 years old and sentenced to, was it 2 to 10 years?
3 to 10.
3 to 10. 3 to 10 years of prison, which it has been reported, and I don't know how much truth is to it, that one of his first prison meals included pudding. Vanilla pudding.
And new Coke, and they commemorated it with Kodak film.
Right. That's what they took his prison pictures with Kodak film. And now, I mean, he's how long has he been in jail now? Close to a week.
He's been in since the 25th, if I'm not mistaken.
So over a week.
Yeah.
And he's going to serve his sentence out to at least 3 years.
He's going to get paroled in 3 years.
Yeah, he'll get paroled in 3 years.
If he doesn't die.
Right.
Well, he's in protective custody, though. I don't think
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about his health.
Health-wise.
Right, yeah. But, I mean, as far as, like, I'm sure what's happening in prison, he's got a single cell to himself in a private part of the prison, I'm sure. Because here's the thing. If you're the warden of that prison, the last thing you want is a headline that reads, Cosby knifed in prison.
Right, absolutely.
You know, they're doing everything they can to protect him, to make sure he doesn't die on their watch. So, I mean, like, you know, prison sucks. I'm not suggesting he's at Club Med, but he's not but this isn't Oz either. You know, he didn't walk into the thing and there's fucking, Beecher. You know, it's like, you know what I've always wanted, Cosby? Like, you can't see it, but I just did the thing he does with the oil with the 2 fingers.
Oh, God, no. It was one of the biggest regrets of my life was watching Oz.
What?
Do you remember that bit, by the way?
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Love that.
I'm not a top 5 show.
Okay. It just, kind of traumatized me when I watch it. But we'll go with that. So, reactions. I want to know. We'll start with Mark. What was your initial reaction to these allegations that came out? Did you believe it? Did you not want to believe it? Did you, what were your thoughts on it?
I'm going to say three things here. When it initially broke, wasn't surprised. And not because I have some sort of presupposition that I think Bill Cosby was a rapist. Even with what I said before, kind of looking at things after the fact.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like, oh, wow, the evidence was all there. I just didn't really look that hard, kind of a thing. So, but I'm so cynical, and Hollywood's such a cesspool, and after everything I said about, men and women, for eons and eons, like Joe Schmo, known as, serial sexual predator. I'm not surprised. My wife puts the news on every morning, and and it was like 3 successive news stories in a row where like someone in law enforcement committing some sort of like murder suicide, and before that you had a series of moms killing their children. I think I'm just numb to it now. So it's like, so tomorrow, is it? I mean, if you just think about what we've lived through in our lifetime, we're all around the same age, give or take a few years, but we've had the Catholic priest, pedophilia scandal. We've had all this, we've had the Me Too thing. Bill Clinton was a rapist.
Kavanaugh threw ice at somebody in 1982.
There's all this shit that's out there. I just wake up and I go, well, what nonsense is going to happen today? Who are we going to find out's a fucking murderer or a rapist or whatever? Lay it on me, news. I
don't watch the news anymore.
I could have expect to wake up with like Mark Radulich. Like, wait a minute, what did I do?
What?
I wasn't there at the time. So there's that. Part of the reason why I insisted we do this podcast and kind of talk about this, and somebody asked me like, "What the fuck are you going to say about it?" Like, he's a convicted rapist. It's said and done. There's nothing to talk about. I'm like, well, there is. I feel the need to memorialize the guy. And not because, like, obviously he's a piece of shit, but he wasn't in my mind until this happened. So for almost 40 years of my life, I knew him as America's dad.
Yeah.
He's on my Mount Rushmore of comedians. So much of his humor and the way he delivered stories. I mean, like, you guys have been podcasting with me for a long time. I steal from Cosby constantly. The way that the impressions that I do, the way I tell stories, the way that I hit punchlines, like, he's one of the models that I use. It's like him and Sam Kinison. That's it. Those are kind of my pillars.
But you're not loud.
You haven't seen me in other circumstances when I'm really on. Yelling into the microphone in a podcast just sounds bad, so I tend not to do it. But I can. But I have been, and I can be. One of my friends used to refer to me as like Lewis Black-esque, just because that's
that's not
not out of the realm of possibility.
True, not at all.
So again, this on that level, to see somebody who I held up as an icon and really looked up to, that hurts me. And maybe that sounds funny to people, but it does. Like, it's like if Bill Cosby's a rapist, it can be anybody. It really can be. Because wasn't this guy like the picture of virtue?
Yeah, I mean, squeaky clean. I mean, I said it several times. The man was squeaky clean.
So there's that, and then, you asked me like how did this affect me? I don't know. I find myself sometimes wanting to tell my kids, and I haven't yet because they're 4 and fucking 7. But like, I almost want to tell them, like, don't look for idols. Don't look for heroes. There are none. Like, that's how this affects me, I guess, is to know that, it's kind of that Charles Barkley thing of I'm not a role model. Like, well, but you are. Like, just people will disappoint you, I guess, is my takeaway from this. People will disappoint you. Keep a distance. And that's a really sad thing to come away with.
Pat, same question.
So my initial reaction was one of, really? And I had 2 recalls after the whole story broke. One of which I brought up before, which was Janice Dickinson on Howard Stern kind of talking about it. And the other was one of my top 3 favorite comics of all time, Norm Macdonald, on The View of all programs. And Norm kind of just says some stuff off the cuff that you're not really sure if he's serious about it or not.
Mm-hmm.
But he had alluded to...
Norm is.
Yeah. But he had alluded to Cosby assaulting somebody in the past. And so I'm like, maybe there was more to it than this. And then, of course, everything broke with some pretty damning evidence along the way. And the biggest feeling I got was just disappointment. Not even disappointment in the sense that, I looked up to him and had tremendous respect for him as a comedian and what he did. But it was more about the public image and specifically things that he had done, like the pound cake speech, where I was like, my God, please just listen to what this guy is saying.
Yeah.
Because he's making so much sense. He's telling you how to stop being terrible. And then you go from that to, well, you can throw all that shit out the window because this guy's assaulting women left and right using drugs to do it.
Yeah.
Well, can I throw this out there? What was your guys' take on the Joe Pa? What's his whole name?
Joe Paterno.
Joe Paterno, because I had a similar thing here. Now, like we're making a lot out of Bill Cosby, and we've an hour ago we spoke to why. But I know somebody who's a Penn State alumni, and when the Paterno thing struck. I have no connection to the guy, and as far as I'm concerned, he should be in prison as well. He shouldn't have just lost his statue. He should have been arrested for aiding and abetting a serial rapist. That being
Right.
said,
Absolutely.
that got me in hot water with this person who shall remain nameless, who insisted that Joe Pa was a good guy and that he didn't deserve what was happening to him, and he's not the one that touched those kids, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And really, what that was a case of was somebody who couldn't let go of their idolization of someone. I'm perfectly willing to sit here and say, no, Cosby's a piece of shit and deserves to go to prison. The full 10 years, probably longer. That being said, I'm just curious, like, where did you guys fall on Joe Paterno?
Ronnie, you want to start this off?
If you're aiding and abetting, then you're just as guilty. I'm sorry, that's just how I feel. If you are helping someone get away with something as horrendous as that, then you need consequences as well.
Like, he was covering it up, from what I understand, or like knew about it and did nothing.
Right. That's
more what it was. That's the thing. It was he turned a blind eye to it, as long as he's,
in my opinion, is helping him.
Right. It's abetting it. It's enabling it.
Yeah.
So here, and long story short, my opinion is exactly the same that of Ronnie. Paterno's a piece of shit for letting it go on. He should be in jail with Sandusky doing the same amount of time. Now, I'll tell you a personal story that resulted out of that. So that whole thing went on, I think it was 2011 and 2012 was the trial. So in the town I graduated high school from in Jersey, they actually made national headlines for hazing at this high school, which is Sayreville High School, in 2014, I believe, yeah. So there was that this hazing had gotten out of control, and there were allegations of that it had gotten sexual, where guys had stuck things into other guys' buttholes. Not to make it funny, but that was one of the allegations that came out. And so as a result of this, they fired the head coach of the football program, who's a guy who I had a personal relationship with because he's originally from Brooklyn, and I grew up across the street from his two nephews. So I had known this guy for years, and then went to the high school where he just so happened to be the head coach, and he had done a lot of good within the community and within that football program, where he turned that program into a powerhouse where they were winning state championships almost every other year. So when this broke out, they decided that because of what had happened with Joe Paterno, the safest thing to do was to fire Coach, who I'm not going to put his name out there to drag him through the mud. You can look it up if you want to, but here's the thing. Having been in the locker room in the high school level and everything, is there hazing? Absolutely. Common stuff that you do is you put icy hot on a guy's jock. You shave somebody's eyebrow. You tie a guy's pants in knots or cut off a leg on him. I never was exposed to any hazing that got to the molestation level. And I sincerely doubt a lot of the claims that were made as far as that goes. But I also can tell you that when we were in the locker rooms and the showers, the coaches were not in there, nor did they stay in there other than to say, get out or good game. And they just turned around and got out because they didn't want to put themselves in a scenario where they're around a bunch of naked underage kids. So because of that that major situation, they scapegoated a good man who did a lot of things because of that. So I say fuck you to Paterno over and over again, because at least because of his his allowance of this to go on. I know one guy who lost a great job and career because of that.
Yeah, this person ended up. I feel silly saying this now after that. It's like not really the same, but like she, this person was like a friend of the family, and like she unfriended me on Facebook, and for a while it was like very it's since thought out, and after that things were, it's just like we're just letting it slide, but like her commitment to this belief, and ultimately it's. It's this like commitment to Penn State as a thing, that blinds her to the obvious. And I think that's what I wanted to say about Cosby. You know, again, why talk about this? Why hash this out for the past hour? Because I can compartmentalize the great things he did with the horrible man. You know, with the horrible man that he is. Like, I get it. You know, and I would tell people, like, you know, if you're interested, go back and listen to those early comedy albums. They stand up. They're still funny. I don't want to see the man's legacy just forgotten about, and everything that he gave to comedy just, you know, fall into the ether. I think there's way too much of that in this culture as it is, you know, where things that are meaningful, you know, are forgotten about, and you know, and we lose a sense of our national culture. I think it's okay. You know, it's like the Thomas Jefferson thing. It's like, he's not any less a great man because he owned slaves and had sex with at least one of them and a kid. You know, George Washington, not any less a great president, you know, despite the fact that he too owned slaves. It's like, you know, I get that Cosby's terrible, and everything should have that star attached to it. That, like, you know, like if you listen to Why Is There Air? Why Is There Air is a great album. Cosby's a terrible man. You know, like, I'm okay with framing it that way.
And well, I can't listen to the albums anymore.
See, that's interesting. You're having a problem with it, huh?
I am, because I feel like, you know, I can listen and laugh, and this guy's hysterical, and then I realize, like, I'm being entertained and allowing myself really to be entertained by a complete piece of shit. And do I really want that? No. And, like, well, you know, you watch this, you watch that. Is there stuff? You know, is there likely a very complete piece of shit in that at some point? Yeah, but I don't know that, and I can plead willful ignorance to that at this point. I know what this guy, at least some of what this guy has done, and I feel morally that by allowing myself to be entertained or engaged by that I am wrong if I do that.
Okay. I'm okay with being wrong in your eyes. I can't.
No, that's, and I'm not saying that for her, but that's just my personal internal feeling. And even if I would try to, like, attempt to listen to, like, you know, like any of the albums, I would feel very disgusted with myself.
Okay, and you have that right, but I think it's actually important for us to have those two different points of views. You know, not everyone's going to agree. I'm sorry, Ronnie. Go ahead.
That's okay. I look at it like this: there was a pastor that wrote a song, a very popular praise and worship song. And he wrote it in the under circumstances of he told everyone that he had cancer and that he only had a certain amount of time to live. And let me see, I can't for the life of me, what is that song? My goodness, the pastor was Michael Guglielmucci. I think that's how you say his name, and he was from Australia. He wrote songs for Planet Shaker's album, Hillsong Live, and the song was called Healer. That's what it is. And he wrote this song, this powerful song that was so popular in so many churches, and people were performing it in church, or singing it in church and making it a part of their worship. You know, the song was incredible. I mean, and you at the time, anybody, every church that I knew of was, had this song in their, whether it was a band or whatever, had it in their repertoire.
Right.
If that church was, into the modern praise.
It was really popular in any church that was playing contemporary worship.
Contemporary worship, yeah. If it was, unless it was, you were in the old time hymns or just not singing, at all, you knew this song. And turns out the entire thing was made up. And he didn't have cancer. He was lying about it. He actually lied about it to cover up a pornography addiction. So I don't know how that came about or why he thought that was an appropriate out for that. If he just got caught looking at porn on a computer and says, well, I have cancer. And everybody's like, what? But, I mean, he even went as far as appearing on stage, at concerts and appearing in pulpits and stuff with oxygen, oxygen tank, wearing, the full, on the nose, the breathing apparatus and everything.
Yeah, he shaved his head.
Shaved his head.
Yeah, I remember that.
And now that song, as powerful as it is, no matter who wrote it, whatever, as amazing of a song that it is, I've not heard it since. It's not played on the radio, on any, contemporary Christian radio stations. It's not in any churches that I know of or anything. They completely abandoned that song. His church didn't abandon him, but they did say that, he was stepped down from any kind of leadership position or anything. They actively sought help for him in different situations in his life. They were counseling him, and from there, I'm not too sure what happened to him.
He's in. If I remember right, the last thing was they actually had him committed to psychiatric treatment.
They all said, while we do love him and support him, we don't condone what in the least. And now that song that honestly was in a time of my life that meant a lot to me. That song meant a lot to me. Is no longer it just doesn't exist anymore, basically. So I guess I kind of look at Cosby the same way. I was so disappointed in the whole thing that I was, to the point of being, as silly as it sounds, I was heartbroken.
Can I let me throw this out there? Jerry Lee Lewis married his 13-year-old cousin.
Yeah.
Doesn't make him any less a musical genius.
Right.
I respect Pat, and I respect anyone's point of view of, I personally, your stuff is tainted. I can't listen to it. You're terrible. And I respect that. I really do. I respect you all, Booker Man. I can't allow myself to look at an entire body of work, a life's body of work, the genius of somebody who entertained me for so long, and say none of that occurred anymore because you're also this horrible monster.
Well, that's where I was going with that. I really struggle with that, along with that song. I struggle with why does that not exist anymore? Yes, the man who wrote it, the man who did this comedy that meant so much to everybody, the man who wrote this song that changed so many lives and did so much good. What makes that any different now? What changes the work and how everybody felt about it at the time? Yes, as you said, the man who wrote it, wrote this comedy and who performed this comedy, is a piece of crap. I mean, there's no way around it. He lied, he drugged women, he raped women. But I guess it's one of those things where, like, I don't want to let myself like it because of the situation that it's. But I can't help it. It meant so much to me as a child. My grandfather and I, this is a man that I looked up to in so many different ways. He introduced me to this album, and we shared that bond over loving this album and laughing at it, and it was a moment that I shared with my grandpa. Do I let what this man did take that memory from me, belittle that in that way?
My dad
I don't want to, but I can't help it sometimes.
My dad and I still do the Jeffrey bit from Bill Cosby himself.
And I was going to say too, like, we're talking here there's still, not just within groups like us, but you have, the Cosby Show was airing in syndicated reruns on TV Land, BET, and a couple other networks, all of which took them off. And
you can't find it anymore.
Well, there's one channel that still plays them, which is Aspire, which is a primarily black audience channel that's actually owned by Magic Johnson. And they still play The Cosby Show. Now, here's the thing. When they play those reruns, the other cast members who were on that show, at least, are being compensated for that because of their deals with syndication. So if that show's still airing, they still get residual checks because of that.
Mm-hmm.
When this whole thing broke, one of the biggest concerns for a lot of people who were involved in that was, now I'm not going to get paid because this all came to the surface, because now they're pulling the shows, and that's, a stream of revenue for me that I've had for, since the show first went into syndication, which was midway through its run, if I'm not mistaken. So like 1988, 1989.
Like the poor dude that was working at Trader Joe's.
I don't know if Jeffrey Owens had syndication rights, because I think he was only a regular for a short time.
Okay. He was. Yeah, he wasn't a. He wasn't the star of the show.
No,
poor Jeffrey.
Recurrings don't often get those deals. But somebody, and I'm not picking on him because I'm sure he's doing just fine. But like somebody like Malcolm Jamal Warner, who you haven't seen in a lot of stuff lately. Mm-hmm. Probably makes a lot of his income from those, from those residuals he gets from that show. So it's one of those things where, like, do I take the moral that this show should never be aired? Well, absolutely not, because first of all, there's other things on that show besides Cosby. You
look at it the same way as you look at Roseanne. While Roseanne made some controversial tweets, everybody pulled the show. And the show that was paying them on top of the the residuals they were getting from the old episode. Yeah. So you don't get any new checks, you don't get any old checks, you just get squat. Because of a mistake or she made a mistake. He violated people, so you can't really compare the two. But Roseanne, man, I discovered who John Goodman was because of that show, and he's now to this day still one of my favorite actors. So where do you go? Where do you draw the line? Do you draw a line?
I think that's a deeply personal thing. I don't think there's a standard answer here. Like, you just heard me and Pat take two different sides.
Two different sides, yeah,
and I think they're equally valid sides. I mean, if Pat's got to live with himself, and if Pat, finds that listening to a Cosby routine makes him feel, makes him feel bad on the inside, then he shouldn't listen to it. Yeah, it does not have that effect on me. If anything, it's like, like I was saying before, I feel like I've lost somebody in my life, and I'm remembering through listening to his albums, I remember the good times. And I kind of just want to put all this ugliness behind me with my relationship to this celebrity, as silly as that might sound.
No, it doesn't sound silly at all. It's true. I mean, we don't. I'm right with you. If you're looking to worship a celebrity, you're setting yourself up for failure. Absolutely. Any person, anybody in this world, they're going to disappoint you. I don't care what anybody says. You're going to get disappointed if you try to hold somebody up to a certain standard. But it's hard to let that go. It's hard to make that decision that yes, I'm not. Yes, I'm going to remember them for who they are, or no, I don't want anything to do with them because of the stupid crap that happened. Guys, I guess with that, I mean, we've really, talked about just. Is there any other points that you guys want to talk about, or anything that you all want to to get out there.
I'd just like to remind people that if Bill Clinton could run for a third term, he would be elected president, and he's a rapist.
Yeah,
Multiple times.
Multiple times. I'm going to keep reminding people of that while the national conversation is what it is.
but people don't like to remember that.
No.
Cough, cough, Alyssa Milano, cough, cough.
Oh,
What a
poor,
moron.
poor Alyssa.
No,
poor
no.
Alyssa, nothing.
No, she's an idiot. She is a literal psychopath on the highest level.
But she was awesome and insatiable.
Yeah, well, just because she has a great ass doesn't mean her head works.
This is true. So that's my final comment, Pat.
Yeah.
Now, my son comes home and he has this look on his face like I've never seen before. And I said, "What are you smiling about, doll?" And he said, "Pop, the man comes on his stage and he says these things." I said, "What things?" He said, "Pop, the man says this stuff." I said, "What stuff?" He says, "Hello, what's this? And kiss that, and suck it, and stick it down your throat and suck on it." You cannot say filth on stage. And I said, I never said no filth Lauren in my life. I'm offended they should call me fuck you. He goes, "That's what I'm talking about. You cannot say fuck." And so I hung up the phone. I called Richard Pryor. I said, "Man, Richard, Bill just called me. He got raw on my ass." And Richard said, "What did he say to you?" I said, he got down on me. My whole act was, cursing and shit. He said, "Hello, suck my dick, everybody. Good night. Dick, motherfucker, pussy, and snot. Good night." I mean, just sticking some jokes between the cursing. And so Richard said, "Do the people come to your show?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Do the people laugh at your jokes?" He says, "Yeah." He said, "Tell Bill to shut the fuck up, smile, and have a Coke. Jello pudding eating motherfucker."
I'd like to add to that. My wife grabs a yardstick,
Yes,
holds it like a samurai warrior, and then makes an announcement that the beatings will now begin. For the longest time, I thought my name was Damn It.
When your dad comes home, he's going to shoot you in the face with a bazooka.
Dad, he's great. He's getting us chocolate cake.
Eating chocolate cake. And I go to the fridge and I grab the grapefruit juice. This is not your child.
All right, so yes, there is some joy to still be had with Bill Cosby because those are amazing bits. Oh gosh,
I misspoke before. It's the line is. I was like, for years I thought my name was Jesus Christ, and my brother Russell thought his name was Damn It.
His name was Damn It. Yeah.
All right, I'm done.
Well, guys, those were actually going to be my final comments, but Mark stole them from me. But guys, thank you so much for being on here and talking this out with us. I feel that we have changed the world tonight, resolved a little, and made some good jokes. So I'm going to say,
I think
go ahead, Mark.
For three white middle class middle aged people, we were quite brave talking about this subject.
I trip over myself a lot. I need to stop doing that. I'm used to doing much lighter fare on our shows. So forgive me for stumbling over what I was saying and everything. But guys, once again, I appreciate you. Pat, thank you so much. Mark, thank you very much. As always, for letting me be on the network. And guys, you all were great. We're going to go into plugs. Pat, what you got going on, my friend?
So, despite our best efforts, we recorded another edition of the Casual Heroes WrestleCast.
It was it was a fun show. It wasn't not fun. It was fun.
Yeah, so you can head on over to YouTube, to Gensocide on YouTube, JenSocide, and you can check out the latest edition of the Casual Heroes WrestleCast. We talk about sexual assault on that too, believe it or not. Jerry Lawler. Or at least we attempt to, and Chris tries to put the kibosh on it because lawyers.
Yeah, I want to see Chris, and I don't mean to do hurt feelings here. This is kind of a bit, but I want to see Ronnie and Chris in a debate as they awkwardly dance around subjects. I think that would be hilarious. Like, I need Chris and Ronnie to just have their own talk show as they awkwardly talk about things.
That would not go well. Many different reasons.
Yeah, I just love both of you guys, but I love how much you guys hate each other.
I hate no one, sir.
I wasn't even going there. Chris is apparently afraid, and doesn't want to do controversial things because, like, he thinks that's not going to get listens. And then there's you who struggles with some of this stuff. You two are the most awkward white people I've ever met. It's hilarious.
I am very awkward and I'm very white.
And
I'm not ashamed of that.
I would listen to you two an hour dance around things. It would be hilarious to me.
Yeah, the non-committal commitment. Featuring Ronnie and Chris.
Welcome to We Have No Opinions. First subject, Brett Kavanaugh. Nope. All right, and now a word from our sponsor.
Actually, I have a big opinion on that.
But you could get a ton of listens if you called it the safe space.
Oh my goodness!
Right. So what was that? I was plugging stuff. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, my opinion on Brett Kavanaugh is not guilty.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're not wrong.
See.
All right.
Go ahead with your plugs.
Yeah. There was some
the show
debate.
That's never going to happen with me and Chris.
Right. There was some debate as to whether my Facebook was hacked because apparently there was a picture of me pleasuring myself. That was sent. That was real because that was what happened when I found out when the FBI once again found nothing on Kavanaugh today. Just want to put that out there.
If you found Pat's page and found yourself sticky for no apparent reason, now you know why.
Man, right. I'm so glad this show's on the network.
Yeah.
I just don't feel like editing all of this.
So, and you can also hear me on another podcast. I did another edition of the Yahoo Football Pigskin Pick'em with Jesse Starcher this past week. My Oakland Raiders played his Cleveland Browns, so we talk a little bit about that. We talk about the ongoings of a couple stories in the NFL. We talk odds, we talk winners, we talk losers, and I make my upset and lock of the week picks.
Very good. Is that all you got going on? Not that that's not a lot. It's good stuff.
No, the Kavanaugh took up a really valuable 4.5 minutes.
Mark, go for it. No, Mark, down. Let me get the spray bottle.
All right. So this week on the Radulich Broadcasting Network, we kicked off Halloween month on source material with Deadpool, Dracula's Gauntlet. Jesse and I did a TV party tonight for Ozark Season 2. We had Sean Garmer from WTM and the return of Robert Cooper on Metal Hammer of Doom as we kicked off Covers Month all month long with Power Glove Continue. Next week, it's Venom Week all week long. We've got, on source material, Venom Lethal Protector, and then Jason Teasley, currently of WTM, formerly from the Cheap Seats here on the Radulich Broadcasting Network. He'll be on Damn You Hollywood to get between myself and Robert as we get into yet another sissy slap fight over just how bad Venom is. Countdown to when Disney finally buys Sony Pictures. On the Metal Hammer of Doom, we'll continue with our covers. We've got Mystic Prophecy, Monuments Uncovered. Get ready. I'm gonna give you all my hot stuff on that one. The following week, we've got Batman Haunted Night, which is a collection of Halloween-themed Legends of the Dark Knight annuals, one-shots, what have you. Robert Winfrey and I will be taking our annual look at Hannibal Lecter as we look at Hannibal Season 2. Devil Driver, Outlaws Till the End. on the Metal Hammer of Doom. It's their covers, the country covers album. And just announced last night on the Metal Hammer of Doom, Sean Gomer, possibly Robert Cooper, and Jesse Starcher are going to join me for a TV party tonight as we discuss the Netflix anime Castlevania.
Ugh.
Seasons 1 and 2.
I'm sorry. Listen, I love the Castlevania series of games. Like, Symphony of the Night is one of my top 5 favorite video games ever. But that show was the shits.
They all hard sold me on it last night, so it's fine. They all hard sold me on it last night.
It sucks.
Okay, terrific. Can't wait. Daredevil drops on October 19th, Daredevil Season 3.
It sucks.
So we're going to discuss the book Born Again.
What did you say, Pat?
I said, speaking of sucks.
Yes, not a fan.
Like Daredevil?
The only Marvel Netflix show I like is Luke Cage.
Goddamn right. King of Harlem, baby. On the Source Material podcast, we're going to be looking at Born Again from Daredevil. Damn You Hollywood's going to look at the now in continuity Halloween. Burn the Priest, Legion XX, and then there'll be a TV party tonight for Daredevil Season 3. And finally, we end the month of October with a slew of Halloween treats. On Source Material, we're going to look at Halloween Night Dance. Sean Comer and I will put the original 1981 Halloween 2 on trial, now out of continuity. Then we go off to Italy to review Trick or Treat, their album Reanimated, bunch of covers, once again. And finally, on November 1st, it's the anniversary of the War of the Worlds broadcast. Justin Thomas, Jesse Starcher, Ronnie Adams, and I will be doing a TV party tonight, extra commentary for the movie Space Invaders. And that is all the news that's fit to print.
I think you should have, instead of listening to an album called Trick or Treat, watched the 1986 movie Trick or Treat with Skippy from Family Ties.
Wow, dude.
That's certainly, if you want to do a commentary over it and throw it up on the network, be my guest.
I'm good.
Yeah, I don't want to watch that. I just thought you should.
Okay. Terrific.
Oh, my goodness.
All right. Ronnie Adams, take me home.
Oh, yeah. I have one request / idea. Pat might be down for this, for a commentary for the month of October. I would, if you all see fit and have the time, I would love to watch Monster Squad with you all.
Didn't we do that
and
last
do a commentary?
year?
Did we do a commentary over it?
Yeah.
We did.
We did?
Yeah. I remember we watched that on Hulu.
Guys, I don't want anything to do with that or with you.
If you want, you can find it on the old Block Talk Radio account, and we can republish.
I obviously need that in my life.
We Google Hangouted that one.
Holy crap! What is wrong with me?
End the goddamn show, Ronnie.
All right, guys. So this has been the Scream Boy Podcast. You can keep up with us on any sort of social media. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram under Scream Boy Podcast. You can find us on Twitter under Scream Boy PR. You can go in. We are on a semi-hiatus. We only right now are doing network exclusives. But you can go into iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, iHeart, and Spotify and listen to all of our old shows. Go back in the archives, listen to some of the stuff that we've got on there. Here on the network, we've done such shows as this one, The Rise and Fall of Toys R Us, the Day Laughter Died, the firing of James Gunn. We've got a lot of cool network exclusives on here that you need to look for. A lot of great shows that are here you can only find on Radulich Broadcasting Network, along with shows like Source Material, Metal Hammer, Doom, Damn You Hollywood, all these great shows that are on here. So, guys, we appreciate you. Go on, give the network, give Scream Boy a like, a follow, a subscribe. We would really appreciate it. And we love you. Have a wonderful evening, morning, whatever time you're listening to this. We're out.